Buenos dias, and that's all. I'll skip to English. My name is Margarida Abecasis, and I'm responsible for the ISA program. The ISA program stands for Interoperability Solutions for Public Administrations, and I will try in the, I think it's half an hour more or less that I have to speak, to present what we are doing at European level to improve the interoperability between public administrations in Europe and to promote the interoperability between public administrations. So I will start to say a few words about why interoperability is important, the role of interoperability in the modernization of public administrations, and why modernization of public administrations is important. It's a little bit awkward for me because I have the English and the Spanish. I'll try not to mix up. I'm Portuguese, so Spanish is close to my language also, so I will try to not mix the languages. But I suppose if I mix up a little bit, it's no problem for you neither. First of all, why is modernization of public administrations important? The figures are there to show it. The public sector represents nearly half of the EU GDP. Public procurement represents almost 20% of EU GDP. It represents more than 25% of the total employment in EU. So the modernization of public administration is fundamental. It is a key factor in the economical crisis that we are passing. An example is e-procurement. The estimations of the savings that can be achieved by putting in place e-procurement is 5 to 20% of procurement expenditure. Just one example. The two cases, the most common cases that we are all aware of in what concerns modernization of public administrations, is a streamlining of cross-sector public services, where you see in the back office the importance of interoperability. We'll never achieve to streamline public services without putting in place interoperability between the different levels of administrations. The so-called only once encoding principle will not be possible without connecting the public administrations, the different entities at the different levels. Local, regional, national, European, and the different sectors. Without this interconnection, there will be no implementation of the only once encoding. The second known example is the sharing data across sectors. Again, it is fundamental to achieve interoperability if you want to share data across sectors. And why is it important to share data across sectors? There was one question that I had in a conference last year. Why is it important to share data across sectors? Of course, the first thing is that you have synergies so that you can achieve savings. There is no purpose in everyone is collecting the same information on the same zone, for instance. Savings, synergies. And for me, I think it is even more important. Imagine these natural catastrophes that we face. When there is a natural disaster, you have different sectors that are involved in handling the crisis. You have, for instance, in the case of floods, we have seen the floods in England this year. We have seen last year the floods in the Danube region. You have different sectors that are involved in addressing the crisis. You have the health service, police services, energy, transport. They are all involved in solving the crisis. If they don't share their data, there is lives that are at stake. So important again for the sharing data. And behind all this is interoperability. Interoperability across sectors, interoperability across public entities, interoperability across institutional levels, and interoperability across borders. Because natural disasters, for instance, they don't know borders. The Danube region, it covers several countries, so across borders. Some more figures now specifically oriented towards the gains of, in achieving interoperability. There are some tentatives on models that can put figures, because our senior managers and our politicians, they like to put figures. What are the gains associated with what we are doing? So there are some models. This comes from one model that is the Microsoft research study, which is interesting. And according to this model, citizens, they have to execute 10 transactions with the state. When each transaction lasts 30 minutes, the impact in the GDP is shown there. And this is based on figures from the World Bank, with the GDP per country, the population, that calculate the GDP per capita, with the GDP per capita, the GDP per working hour, supposing 2,000 working hours a year. So there are some suppositions behind, but the idea is simple, and it demonstrates the importance of interoperability. Another example that I've heard last year also in a conference, it comes from the French tax services, where they evaluated the cost of a face-to-face transaction to 20 euros, and via the internet to 0.5 euros. And 1 in 5 persons need more than 1 contact with the tax services to solve their case. So figures exist. We must still probably have more examples so that we can explain why interoperability is important. In any case, I think at the political level, the message has passed. And we have seen, for instance, in the last annual growth surveys from 2011, 2012, 2013, the importance of modernization of public administrations. You can see in the extract from the Council conclusions on October 2013, modernization of public administration should continue. Open data is an untapped resource with a huge potential. Interoperability and reuse of public sector information shall be promoted actively. So there is awareness. There is awareness on the political level on the modernization and the role of interoperability. In the country-specific reports also, and you can see in the Spain-specific report and country positioning paper, we have again and again these recommendations. Cut red tape, improve the efficiency of public administrations, integrate electronic administrative services, reduce administrative burden, transparency. Different layers of public administration should work together. Modernization of public administrations. If you go through the different country-specific reports, you see all over these same messages that are repeated. By the way, the other day I came across to the origin of the expression red tape. Are you aware of the origin? Someone is aware? So I read it, as I read that was written somewhere. The Spanish administration under Carlos V in the early 16th century started to use red tape to bind the important documents that had to be urgently discussed by the Council of State, distinguishing them from the normal documents binding in ordinary rope. It's just an anecdote. So the evolution of the red tape, it's interesting. It started with Carlos V for the modernization of the administration, and now it's a synonym of bureaucracy. So just... With this, I will start to what we do at European level for interoperability. So the ISA program addresses three main chapters: the cross-border and cross-sector interaction, the sharing and reuse of solutions, and implementation of solutions supporting EU policies. And our actions and our activities are more or less dictated, and are mainly dictated by the barriers that have been identified to interoperability and sharing and reuse. It is interesting to note that most of these barriers were already identified in 2000. It's a little bit worrying. So in 2000, there was service. 2005, there was service on this end, and more recently, there was, and we came across all and over again the same barriers. And these barriers are technical, of course. You know that we have technical barriers, but they are not only technical. They are organizational barriers. They are communication barriers, financial barriers, legal barriers, administrative barriers. Any tentative to improve the interoperability between public administrations should address the different types of barriers. We cannot focus only on technical. We cannot only focus on semantics and language. We must focus on all. And so we need an holistic approach, let's say, for this to achieve interoperability. So that's what we have, the way we have organized the ISA program, and the actions and activities around interoperability at the European level covers different type of activities that answer the different barriers that were identified. So for instance, we have strategic activities, strategic and structural actions that are ongoing, and I will speak more about the European Interoperability Framework. And there are also sharing and reuse strategy, how to identify means and tools to improve the sharing and reuse of solutions across administrations. We have the identification and assessment of the solutions. You cannot build a strategy if you don't know what is the situation on the field. So it is very important to monitor and assess the solutions that you have so that you can afterwards know what is there to do, and establish an agenda, let's say, of interoperability, identifying what's missing, putting the efforts on what's missing. So then there we have the support to the development and implementation of solutions. And once we have developed the solutions, implemented, put it in place in operation, we must check if they are used. So we must monitor the utilization of the solutions that we have implemented, and we must tune the solution or change if they are not correctly adapted to the situation. And then we must raise awareness, we must communicate. So any approach towards achieving interoperability must take into account these different activities. I will go through some of them, but you'll have all the actions that are taken at the level of the ISA program in the links that are indicated at the end of the presentation. The first one, as strategic activities, is the definition of the European Interoperability Strategy and the European Interoperability Framework that was adopted by the Commission in December 2010, and it is one of the most critical aspects covered by the digital agenda. Member States agreed to translate and transpose the European Interoperability Framework into national interoperability frameworks. That is the case of Spain, and this subject will be addressed more in detail by Miguel Amucio in the afternoon. So you will see what is the situation in Spain concerning the transposition and implementation of the European Interoperability Framework. The European Interoperability Framework covers a set of recommendations. This set of recommendations addresses principles, conceptual models, agreements, and interoperability levels. And I will address only the interoperability levels in this presentation. Again, you have all the information you need in the links that are available at the end of the presentation. So these are the interoperability levels that have been identified. And again, we must act at all these interoperability levels. You have the technical level. We know building interfaces, defining data formats, building the infrastructure services, coping with the legacy systems, very important. I have a nephew of mine, he's a software engineer. 2 years ago, he was still working with COBOL. Still working with COBOL. So systems from the 80s. So it is an important technical obstacle, is how to handle these legacy systems. At the semantic level, we need to share the meaning and understand the meaning of the information we exchange. This is essential, and I think there is a lot of efforts that are being put in place, and again, it is one major point of Miguel Amucci's presentation this afternoon, what is being done in Spain. I give you an example. I came across some months ago with a document concerning the control of traffic arms in Europe. And this document identified one of the major aspects in improving the control was the fact that the different sectors involved in this domain did not share the same meaning for the words. So the home, justice, transport, they did not have a common understanding of the information that were exchanged. So semantics, fundamental, and I will speak about some specific actions that we have done in this area. And then we have the legal level. At the legal level, I jump one because I'll come back to the organizational, so don't worry. The legal level, it is important. Why is it important? It's important that there is a legal value associated with the information that we exchange. So the ones that receive information must be sure of the legal value of the information. This is an example. Another example of the legal implications, it's the data protection legislation, for instance. Applying the only once encoding principles can be difficult in some countries where they have specific legislation for the data protection, private data. So the legal aspect can be tricky in the implementation of interoperability, and we must be aware of it and live with it. Huh? It's, of course, we have the political context. It's always the politicians are always there to put some money on the table so that we can do something. And there is also one aspect that it's not mentioned, but it is extremely important, which is culture. Yes, I have 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I will skip the cultural aspect and I'll come back. Because I want to say a few words of organizational interoperability, which is extremely important. Organizational interoperability, it can cover diverse aspects. It can cover the global aspect of putting in place the means of interoperability across different administrations, and it can cover also the specific aspect of a specific project. So you have in the organizational interoperability, you have the alignment of processes. You have the sustainability issue. So many cases that we have seen of projects, they put in place a solution, and 2 years after, it's frozen, because sustainability was not taken into account. So we need to think about sustainability, financial, operational, organizational, and these must be put in place. And for this, it is important, for instance, cost-sharing mechanisms, business models, service level agreements. And we are developing examples or collecting examples, because there are some examples out there that will be made available in the joiner platform so for everyone to use. And again, I have another anecdote, although I have 5 minutes only, that I think it is interesting, because there is also in this aspect a change of culture. We need to break down silos. So this idea that possession of data and process means power, it must change. And I have come across another saying of this, Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès. The guy said, thus we must consider the citizens, taxpayers, as the shareholders of this big social enterprise. They provide the funds, they are its masters. When did Emmanuel Joseph say these words? 1788, 1789, French Revolution. I think we are not yet totally there. So, but it's interesting to see. Another strategic action that is needed is a reference architecture. So we have defined, it's ongoing work, European reference architecture that will help designing new digital public services, that will help assess what exists out there, to structure the information systems that already exist and put them available. This European reference architecture, which we are testing now, consists of four views. So we have the business view, the data view, the application view, and the technology view. For each of these views, there are a number of building blocks that are defined. And further to this, we have a narrative. So there is a narrative. So it allows to tell a story. For instance, for the business view, you can see, I'll pick up the English version. Organization in the role of service providers, supply public service to public administration. So it helps defining the building blocks and translating and instantiating the reference architecture for a particular application. The example given there is the iPrior system. So you can pick up a system and apply the European reference architecture by telling a story and then associating the blocks of the particular information system to the blocks of the European Interoperability reference architecture. This is work in progress, and we will be putting it in joiner platform as soon as we have more information, and after presenting it to as the committee next March. So the other area that I mentioned is extremely important. It's to collect, evaluate, disseminate what exists. And for this, we have put in place 3 tools, and I think 2 are of specific importance for the member states. One, it's the National Interoperability Framework Observatory that collects what are the transposition of the national interoperability frameworks in each member state and allows to compare the different situations. This is available also in JoinUp, so you can go there and check the status of the Spanish NIF and compare it with the others. It's not bad, the situation of the Spanish NIF on this matter. The other is an interoperability maturity model that allows to measure the maturity of public services in terms of interoperability. And there they measure, for instance, the choreography, how are the processes aligned, the delivery of service to the end users, the provision of services to other public administrations, and the consumption of services from third parties. So interoperability maturity model, yet another tool to help us improve interoperability. All this is available in the joiner platform. At the European level, we are also collecting what exists and assessing all the systems, the information systems that are out there that support EU policies and building a map with all that exists. This allows others to go and check, is there something that I can reuse in my application? It's, of course, more easy at the lower levels where we have infrastructure services like the network service, the e-signature service, EID services, a little bit more difficult in the higher levels where you go to the business, but it is possible. And I think it's the same case in the member states' administration. I will finalize the presentation now with some examples of solutions. First, in the area of semantics, we have developed ADMS, the ADMS specifications that allows to define in a common way semantic assets. So it is a tool to help finding what exists already in terms of semantic specifications. So if someone needs to use semantics in a given area, they can search of what exists using ADMS. The Joiner platform has put in place a federation of repositories of semantic definitions that uses precisely ADMS. The other important actions that have been done concerns the core vocabularies. The core vocabularies are essential because they address precisely the cross-sector aspect. They intend to define, capture the fundamental characteristics of an entity in a context-neutral manner, so essential for cross-sector. And we have defined the person, the location, the business, and the public service. And the W3C has taken on board ATMS and the REGORG. My final saying is for some examples of applications that can be of use also in the member states. We have the machine translation service that has been developed and covers the 24 languages of the European Union, specific with a good basis of EU documents. We have the European Citizens Initiative with online collection software that can be reused by organizers of these initiatives. And building on this, we have this validation tool for national authorities, a good example of reuse because it was developed by German authorities and it was adopted by the European Commission so that any member state can reuse this validation tool, for instance, in the European elections that will come on May, to validate the signature of those that will vote in countries that are not theirs. So a good use of reusing. And I will end because I have the flag there that it's constantly burning. You can check these and other initiatives and actions and results of the ISA program in the following links. The first one is the ISA primary webpage, and the second is a collaborative platform where you can go and collaborate, participate in the communities, and it's the Joiner platform. And thank you very much. Gracias for your attention.